Jake Tapper, fresh off his big win in the swing state of Georgia last November, Republican Governor Brian Kemp has a message for his party ahead of 2024. Voters, he says, want to hear about your policies, not your sour grapes. Kemp, who in 2020 refused to overturn former president's official and factual and legal loss in Georgia, told an audience of Republican donors yesterday, quote, "Looking through the rearview mirror takes our eye off the road ahead," unquote. Wonder who he's talking about. Joining me now to discuss, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Governor Kemp, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. So Georgia has become a purple state. President Biden narrowly won in 2020. You have two Democratic senators who have been elected, and one of them reelected. But you handily won re-election in 2022 in a tougher than expected year for your party. What went wrong for Republicans in the 2022 midterms, do you think, and how do you fix it?
Well, really a pretty simple message, Jake. Thanks for having me on. I mean, Georgia, in my opinion, is not a purple state. We're a slightly red state. And we got to have a voice to voters where they will vote for us. And that was really a pretty simple message I gave. You know, the reports on my speech are all over the board, but it really was a very simple theme. We have to tell people, number one, what we're for. Number two, that we're going to be focused on the future and what we're going to do for, you know, the voters in our state or the American people. And then number three, we have to do a simple thing. We have to win. I mean, if we don't have, you know, if we don't win the White House, you can't govern, you can't make a lot of the decisions that, you know, we are seeing been made right now in Washington, D.C. that has Joe Biden's approvals ratings, you know, at 40% or below in the state of Georgia. So it's a pretty simple message for those that are running.
So you told Republican leaders that, quote, being distracted by what is happening at the Manhattan and Fulton County District Attorney's offices is not going to win us back the White House, unquote. You also said, quote, not a single swing voter will vote for our nominee if they choose to talk about the 2020 election being stolen, unquote. Do you think Donald Trump is unelectable on a nationwide scale? Would it be a mistake for the Republican people, Republican Party voters, to nominate him?
Well, that's for the people to decide, but my point is exactly what you said. We cannot get distracted. I mean, one of the things that I learned running in 2022 in a very tough environment against a very tough nationally funded opponent that raised $100 million, 90% of the money coming from outside of the state, is you cannot get distracted. You have to tell the voters of your state why they need to vote for you. That's why I talked about what we're doing here in Georgia to help people fight through 40-year high inflation, high gas prices, making sure they have a good paying job, and making sure that we're doing something about crime in their neighborhood by going after street gangs and street racers. And if we get distracted and talk about other things that the Democrats want to talk about, like these investigations, regardless of what you think about the politics of those, if we get distracted every day and let the media just talk about that, that only helps Joe Biden. It does not give us a path for Republicans to win.
You said the eventual 2024 presidential nominee needs to be able to win Georgia. Not only has Donald Trump lost Georgia, a lot of his handpicked candidates, including David Perdue, including Herschel Walker, lost Georgia. Do you think Donald Trump is unable to win Georgia anymore? And that's also one of the reasons why you were reelected. People saw you as a bulwark against his kind of politics.
Well, and that's really my point from yesterday's remarks, is the road to the White House is coming through Georgia and 2 or 3 other states that really, in my opinion, are going to decide the presidential race. And I was just laying out the blueprint for, I think, any candidate to be able to win, is to talk about what we're for, focus on the future, not look in the rearview mirror. You know, if you look in the rearview mirror too long while you're driving, you're going to look up and you're going to be running into somebody, and that's not going to be good. It's like a quarterback that throws an interception. If you dwell on that the rest of the game, your team's not going to fare very well. But if you put it behind you and focus on the game ahead in the future, then you're going to win. And that was my point yesterday. For people to ultimately be able to win, we have to tell people what we're for. We got to focus on the future. And we also have to just make, the comparisons with the disaster of the Biden administration when you look at the border, when you look at 40-year high inflation, our domestic energy policy, our strength around the world. And those are the things I think we're going to have a lot of good candidates that if they focus on those things, we got a great chance of winning the White House in 2024.
Your speech took place in Nashville just 2 weeks after a mass shooting there left 6 dead at Covenant Elementary School, including the death of a friend of your fellow Republican governor, Bill Lee. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear also lost one of his friends in another mass shooting at a Louisville bank. Take a listen to what Governor Beshear said on CNN a few days ago.
I've been governor during this pandemic. I've been governor during tornadoes and floods and negative 45-degree wind chills and everything else. And we've lost a lot of people during those, but calling your friend's wife, who's also your friend, to tell her that her husband is gone is amongst the hardest things I have ever done.
Governors Beshear and Lee are both now calling for what's essentially a red flag law, which would allow police to take guns out of the hands of individuals who have been adjudicated to be at risk to themselves or to others, potentially, temporarily take away their firearms. There's a conservative sheriff in Florida who says that it's a very effective tool. Would you support something like that in Georgia?
Well, Jake, first of all, my thoughts and prayers certainly go out to the people of Kentucky and Tennessee. And, I've been a governor during those times, too, where we've lost a lot of people. I've had to visit a state patrol officer that was shot by somebody that was illegally in a forest protester. You saw those officers being assaulted when they were going in, true heroes, and we certainly appreciate what they do. And that's why, every state's going to have these debates. I will tell you in Georgia, thankfully, we have been ahead of the curve on a lot of these issues. When you think about school security, we did school security grants to every school in the state. Shortly after I was elected in 2019, I proposed another round of that this year before both of these shootings of $50,000. So that is an issue we have to continue to work on. But also I'm proud of the fact that last year in the Georgia General Assembly, the late great Speaker David Ralston and I and the rest of the General Assembly passed a massive mental health bill to continue to work on these issues. There are no easy solutions. And these are things that governors and legislators are going to have to continue to focus on. But I'm also going to continue to focus on going after really bad people that, quite honestly, doesn't get the play that a mass shooting does, that are shooting up our streets and our people every single day, as well as our neighborhoods. And so these are issues we have to continue to dig in on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's more people are killed in these one-offs, one person killed, 2 people killed, than in these mass shootings, absolutely. And by handguns, more so than by semi-automatic weapons. Let's turn to abortion because the U.S. Supreme Court is right now allowing access to this key abortion medication, mifepristone, until Wednesday night. They're going to have to make a decision one way or another. This is after a Texas judge revoked the pill's FDA approval last week. Now, when Roe v. Wade was overruled last year, you applauded that. The Supreme Court sent abortion back to the states. That doesn't seem to be what this judge is doing, though, with mifepristone. It seems to be like this one judge in Texas is making a decision for everyone nationwide. Is that okay with you? Are you comfortable with this judge making one decision for the entire country?
Well, I haven't really looked at any of these rulings. I mean, I think, eventually the Supreme Court's going to decide this. In Georgia, we've had a law on the books since 2019. It is the law in our state. And depending on what any federal judge or the Supreme Court would ultimately say, that's what's going to be in place in Georgia. It's been that way for a long time. We are a state that values life. But, Jake, this is a tough issue. And this is, again, to my point of my remarks in Nashville, is we have to explain to people what we're for. And, voters don't expect to agree with us on every single issue. But when I tell people we're a state that values life, you may differ on your opinion whether you like our heartbeat bill or not, or you think it should be a different policy. And we can have those debates. But also, if you look at what we've done in Georgia, we've done foster care reform. We've done adoption reform. We've done mental health reform. And we're continuing to go after gangs that are killing people every day. To me, that is a life issue. So it's not just as simple of, what has happened with abortion policy. It is really an overarching conversation that I think Republicans have to do a better job of explaining to people where we are, and also, when somebody may not disagree with your position. I mean, people are principled in this country, and I think voters understand that even if they disagree with you. But we have to be honest and transparent with them. And we have to, not be afraid to tell people where we are and be truthful.
The Fulton County District Attorney in Georgia is investigating former President Trump's alleged interference in the 2020 election in Georgia, as you know. You have talked about, and you just did yesterday, that, quote, being distracted by what's happening at the Manhattan Fulton County District Attorney Office is not going to win us back the White House in 2024. Are you saying that your party should stop attacking these investigations and allow the justice system to run its course? And have you had any conversations with law enforcement about preparing for a possible Trump indictment and protests that might ensue?
Well, we talk to law enforcement every day about people that are, planning protests and other things. And, it's been very clear how we handle those things in the state of Georgia. Atlanta's a city too busy to hate. We're going to help people peacefully protest, but we're also not going to allow people to get out of line. And I think the people in our state know that. And anybody that's coming from out of our state that doesn't realize that, they are in for a rude awakening. But I would just say that's why we cannot get distracted. I mean, you can have whatever opinion you want, whether these investigations or grand jury things that have been going on are politically motivated or not, or, why have they taken so long in some instances. But regardless of that, that is not what we can focus on every day. I can't control what the judicial branch is doing or what a local prosecutor is doing in many ways. But what we can control is what we're focused on. And that's exactly what my message was to Republicans, and it's what we just finished doing in our legislative session that ended just a few weeks ago. We sent $1 billion back to the taxpayers. We did property tax relief of $1 billion, helping people fight through Joe Biden's 40-year high inflation. And we are continuing to fulfill our promises, another teacher pay raise and things of that nature. So we have been focused on telling people what we're for and why they should vote for us.
All right, Republican Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, thank you so much. A belated congratulations on UGA. And thanks so much for joining us. Don't be a stranger.
Go Dogs.
All right.